I hear a lot of preppers and survivalists talking about how people will be fleeing the cities during some type of disaster or SHTF event. The talk never seems to go much further or deeper than that. Well, it's a difficult one, that's why. They seem to never to entertain the thought that despite their best efforts, they themselves might be stranded in the nightmarish scenario of hundreds of miles of gridlocked traffic. It doesn't matter if it's an EMP, solar flare, earthquake, or global financial crash, or a pandemic that causes a societal collapse. In a major event such as this, everyone in the disaster area will be hitting the road to get out of the city. The panicked populace will be freaking out and grabbing everything they can as they take to the highways to escape. Millions of refugees will spill out into the countryside. In recent years, people have fled by the thousands to get away from areas of an impending storm. However, almost everyone is a procrastinator, including me, and waits until the last minute to do anything. Even if their lives depend on it, they wait until the last minute. Denial will be the killer of many a person. Nobody thinks bad things can happen to them until that bad thing is happening to them. And even then, their brain will be saying, "This can't be happening." The point of this particular video is to get you to ask yourself what you would do if you found yourself unexpectedly caught in the masses of people fleeing the city or a city. What then? What's your plan? When do you abandon your expertly packed bug-out vehicle? That brings me to the thought of this. I think leaving your vehicle and going on without it, for most people, will not be easy. When do you abandon your vehicle? Well, let's look at your options in this worst-case scenario of a major disaster event that forces people to flee the city by the millions. So plan A for driving to your destination is no longer a possibility. Your plan B for driving back, that's not really an option. Your plan C for getting off the highway and take an alternate route is not possible. Everybody else will probably be wanting to do that. And plan D, staying until help arrives or traffic starts to move, is probably not a safe bet for a plan. I agree, under normal circumstances in a civilized environment where services are still functioning, staying put might work. However, in a catastrophic SHTF situation where the rule of law is quickly breaking down, it may not be safe to stay put for very long. The first thing we survivors should do is be brutally realistic about the situation we are now in and not underestimate our enemies. That would be a grave mistake, pun intended. This would be a situation that nobody's ever encountered before. Therefore, your brain will try to normalize the situation by going on what it's encountered before. And that is that traffic always eventually clears up. It's just a matter of waiting it out. So the urge to stay put will be a strong one. If you're not alone, the decision to leave the vehicle will also be met with resistance from your family or members from other people within your vehicle. The simple fact is this: being stuck in a 100 or 500 mile traffic jam for days or even weeks might be the end of you and your family. There'll be no gas, there'll be no food, there'll be no water, and human predators will soon be looking over the herd for easy targets. To better figure out how to defend against such dangers, I use the same method I used when I wrote my book, The SHTF-Art-of-War. I put myself in the mindset of a bad guy, and I plan on how I would take advantage of people fleeing the cities with all their goods and valuables jammed into their cars and RVs. Here's how I do it if I were a bad guy. After all, a very smart man once said, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." So let's look at this from a predator's point of view. All right, all the law enforcement officials will be concentrated in the inner cities where all the looting and rioting will be taking place. Cell phones will more than likely not be working as the lines of communications become overloaded and shut down even in recent localized disasters. So we won't want to depend on a cell phone. The miles of highway will be virtually unguarded and phone calls to 911 will not be working. A bad guy will pretty much have free rein to commit any crime he'd like. He'll still have to be on the lookout for a stray squad car trying to make its way through the miles of jammed up roads. He'll know the lay of the land ahead of time. A road atlas and other maps of his hunting area will make it much easier for him to know where all the routes of travel are, and where the resources are for his survival. He'll avoid those areas where the unprepared but alert have formed groups and circled the wagons for protection. If he sees this kind of organization, this means that there must be someone in that group who has read my book and is armed, or there is someone in the group who has had some kind of military training. Whatever the reason, it's not worth the risk of someone taking a shot at him. And the name of the game at this point is risk versus reward, especially when there are so many other non-alert victims to choose from. It's best to look for an easier target. Scoped rifles, binoculars, and patience will be the key for him to getting as much intelligence as possible on the target. Not only what kind of supplies he can liberate, but also what kind of opposition he may encounter. Taking care of or neutralizing that opposition from a distance will be the first order of business. You got to look at this like the bad guys are going to be like a lion or a wolf. A bad guy or a group of bad guys will look for the easiest pickings on the outskirts of the herd. They'll look for your blind spot or a weakness in your defenses. And it won't be a fair fight. They will wait and watch for the right opportunity, and when that time is right, they will strike fast so as not to allow their victims any time to react. There is always safety in numbers. Your best bet is to make some new friends out of the people who are in your immediate area or your section of the traffic jam. Let's hope some of them are armed citizens. The more battle buddies you have, the safer you'll be. Like I said before, making the decision to leave your vehicle will be a hard one. When to do that will depend on the particular set of circumstances you'll find yourself in. It would be impossible for me to cover all the variables here. I say in my book that your ability to adapt to your changing environment and not be too rigid in your survival plans will be the most important survival tool you have. I said there's safety in numbers. However, there is also a whole new set of difficulties that go with a group dynamic. You're going to have to do what's best for you and your situation. Staying in the group will be difficult. Everyone will want to do their own thing. They will all want to get home or to get to where they're going. But you got to remember, there will be no extra food or fuel, and other groups will have formed along the stretches of highway also. There will be lots of competition for the resources along the routes of travel. The social fabric will only hold out for so long before it begins to break down. Leaving your vehicle as soon as possible and getting a head start on the herds of survivors might also be your best bet to avoid this kind of trouble. Maybe you can join up with a group heading in the same direction as you. Remember, everyone will be out for themselves during this early stage. Everyone will all have an overwhelming urge to get home, to get where they feel safe. They want to go back and find their families, so everyone's going to want to go their own direction. Once you've made the decision to leave your vehicle, well, now you're on foot, and you are now officially a scavenger. Personally, I can't rule out what I won't do to survive and feed my family if I'm starving and desperate. I've been hungry before, but never starving. It's easy to say what we would or wouldn't do with a belly full of food. I will also say this. Like it or not, your 72-hour bug-out bag now makes you a target for every other starving refugee scavenger. Just something to keep in mind. As the gravity of the situation sinks in after a day or two, the highway people will begin to leave their vehicles and spill out into the countryside and small towns for help. I think the small towns will initially lend a helping hand, but as the situation grows worse and the number of refugees gets larger, the townsfolk will eventually become overwhelmed and have to turn people away. As the situation grows more and more desperate and resources dry up and shipments of goods and other resources stop coming in, the town folks will eventually set up roadblocks and use force to protect themselves. But one of the first things to think about is being one of the first refugees to arrive in a town will have its advantages. It's the old first come, first serve rule. So evaluating your situation fast and making the decision to leave the road that you're currently trapped on before everyone else, well, that's going to get you ahead of the thousands of others who are going to wait till the last minute to do anything. I hope this gives you something to think about, especially if you are driving somewhere this summer for a vacation or passing through a densely populated area in your travel route. I'd like to hear from others who have thought about this 500-mile traffic jam of death situation and what they'd do. So please comment and make a video response if you have something to add to the conversation. If you think this information may be useful to others, well, please pass it on through your emails and other social media. The book, The SHTF-Art-of-War, can be bought on Amazon. I've put the link below, as well as a link to my website, the SHTF-Art-of-War.com. There you'll find more survival information and more insight into my worst case scenario apocalyptic survival book. All right, thank you for your time. Drive safely.